Wait, you had TikTok?
Yeah.
No.
I
just pandemic, huh? Yeah, I just can't. That's.
Well, Bella pushed me to do it, and I was like, yeah.
I get stuck watching the reels on Facebook, and I'm like, these are.
And most of them are TikToks.
Right, but a lot of them are like middle-aged moms trying to act cool, and I'm like, no.
Us old people gotta ruin everything.
No, yeah, exactly.
Facebook.
I'm like, just stay home. I don't care how you met your husband. I don't care how many kids you had. Like, I don't care how much that you make all the money for the household.
Yeah, well, thank you.
I got a headache.
Worry about people out bad breath, huh?
No, I just.
I was gonna say, I thought the mask helped.
Talk to the boss to take your name.
Oh, I
Oh, I have it.
don't know.
I just don't complain about it. Three of the same book.
Three?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so the one that came up with the plan this
Separation. We sat here first, they didn't say what.
Okay.
I actually warned them, Thomas. I went into
Okay, I got
213 or 214 and said, hey, when you go in there, you always go on this side.
Good afternoon, folks.
Oh, sorry.
We've got 3:30. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're here to celebrate Miss Jenna Kibbe on her journey. She has 3 questions she's going to answer for the next half hour. Who does she aspire to be as a teacher? What opportunities is she engaged in to become a better one? And how is she going to maximize her student teaching internship here in a few weeks in the spring semester? Jenna, as a quick reminder, Kendra will be monitoring the chat and the Zoom as well as the Facebook Live, and she'll be relaying the questions from the online audiences. There will be an opportunity to ask Q&A for both online and the face-to-face group. When that time comes, she will be translating that for us. If you could repeat those questions so that those online can hear us plenty well, that would be fantastic. Jenna, they are all yours.
Awesome, thank you, Dr. Curry. And I'd like to thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. And I want to thank my online audience as well. I really do appreciate the support. So reflecting back on my time in school, my absolute favorite part of school growing up was story time. So I figured, why not end my education journey by telling you all a story about me. And so today, I'm going to tell you Jenna Kibbe's story to becoming Miss Kibbe. So in order to understand the story better, you gotta get to know the characters. So I would like to recognize a few of the important characters in my story. The first one being my family. So they traveled all the way from Tennessee to New York to be here today. I would not be at this spot without the support of my family, so thank you guys for everything. The next are these goofballs from the front row, my FFA state officer team. You all have really helped me develop into the leader I am today. We go back way back into good New York times, and so I appreciate you all traveling back to Penn State, to my favorite school from New York and to DC, so thank you all. And then I would not be the same person I am without my awesome cohort members, so thank you guys for being here today. You really have helped me through my story, so thank you. So I'm going to be answering 3 questions like Dr. Curry said, but I'm going to go a little bit out of order and start from the very beginning to where what experiences I have been partaking in to become a better educator. And so this is the first question I'm going to answer. And we're going to start way back to where my story begins in Findlay Lake, New York, where I graduated high school in 2018. And life looked a little bit different for me, but it really helped me to become the person I am with the things that I was involved in. And so the first picture at the top is a picture of my sister and I in basketball. If you guys know me, I love to play basketball, and it really taught me a lot about communication, working together as a team, and it really helped me develop my work ethic, which I think is one of my biggest strengths, and basketball is just a really big part of my life, and so that really helped build me into the person I am. Next, I was an FFA state officer my senior year at high school, and so this is our team as we were all fresh, didn't know each other from Adam, and we all came together to really work together to serve the FFA members in New York in 2017 and 2018. And so that really impacted me and helped me learn a lot on my journey. And finally, I have a picture of my family and I. I did not grow up with a traditional farm background, but I did have a bit of a green thumb with gardening, and I do have a love for horses. And so I worked on a horse farm for one of my SAEs. And this was actually the day before I moved to Penn State. I led my family on a trail ride at the horse farm that I worked at. And so all of these collectively work together to lead me to my life at Penn State. And so some of the things I've been engaged in at Penn State have been a political science class that I took, and I went to DC. I actually received a grant to travel there, and so I started at Penn State Barron. And so having that Commonwealth campus experience really provided me some cool opportunities that I wouldn't have gotten here at University Park. I've also served as a Teach Ag Adventure, and you can see the group of us down there. And so I've just really tried to promote the agriculture education department here at Penn State. I have been a member and served as an officer of our LEAD Society, so that stands for Literacy, Education, and Agricultural Development. And so you can see us making homemade ice cream in the bag one night. And so that really has taught me a lot, and it's given me more opportunities to travel to Indianapolis and compete with Penn State. So that has been a really big part of my journey. And I've also served as a transfer student mentor, so really trying to help underclassmen. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about how I got to fill that role with this one internship that I had. And so I want to address 3 key courses that I have taken at Penn State that have really helped me prepare as I enter into the classroom. And so to gain my horticulture knowledge, 2 of my favorite classes have been gardening for fun and profit, and then my advanced floral design that I just completed. And so I mentioned I have a bit of a green thumb, but these classes collectively have really taught me a lot, and I'm excited to hopefully teach floral design one day. And right now, the way it's going, I'm banking on this to be my retirement plan to have a flowers business one day. So we're going to keep that, hopefully that passion stays alive. And the next class that I've taken, I know this is an awful picture, but it was an animal science class with Dale Over. And so this picture was actually taken at Cornell when I was in high school. I got to stick my arm in a holy cow, but these two experiences really worked in harmony. I don't have a huge background in animal and livestock, but I really have learned so much, and I do feel more confident now teaching animal science next semester because of this class and then my experience at Cornell. And then finally, my higher education 303 class, which was a leadership development orientation, as I served as a new student orientation leader my sophomore year. And so I actually had to take a full class on how to help students transition into the college atmosphere. And I learned a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion as we were welcoming students from all across the world. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that job entailed in my work and experience part. But this course really did teach me a lot on how to become a better teacher and just how to be a better citizen and include all people. During my time at Penn State, I've had a little bit of a chance to get some accomplishments under my belt. And so I've acquired 2 minors, one being in Spanish and the other in international agriculture. And so I really think these are going to help me when I enter in the classroom, as I'm going to be able to communicate with my English language learner students a lot better. As I'm pretty close to being bilingual, I wouldn't fully credit myself that, but I can speak Spanish pretty decently. And then I have a bunch of certifications that I've completed with my CPR, AED1. I completed my National Safe Tractor Machine Operator program. I am a hunter, and so I do have my hunter safety certification. I'm going to shout out Dr. Foster's Parley Pro class. I did take that class my sophomore year, and through passing that exam, became an accredited parliamentarian. And then I passed my Google Educator certification. So really, to any underclassmen that are watching, there are so many opportunities with classes that you can take and extra clubs that you can get involved in that are going to help prepare you for the classroom. And these are just a few of mine. And so throughout this past semester, I really have been engaging in a lot of professional development with my cohort members. And so this first picture right here was an inquiry-based learning institute that we attended with Miss Jessica Grundy from Utah. And so it's a picture of me dissecting a flower, pretty cool stuff. And I learned a lot about how to engage students through problem solving and inquiry learning instead of just doing your traditional PowerPoint and take a test exam. It's more hands-on. I want to solve a problem and learn through doing a lab instruction. And then I've also attended the Pennsylvania Association of Agriculture Educators Conference, as well as the National Association of Agriculture Educators Conference in New Orleans. And so these 2 conferences, I was really able to develop in some workshops on professional development by interacting with a lot of teachers across the country. and then just really gain some advice. It's been nice to talk outside of workshops and learn what the teacher life is like. And so you can see this is a teacher that we worked pretty closely with as state officers that I was able to reconvene with. And so really just a great opportunity to learn about the whole profession and prepare me as a teacher. And then throughout my time here at Penn State, I have tried to support my fellow agriculture education department students. And so whether it's my cohort members or else the members below us, I try to be a friend and a helping hand. So helping out prepare for meetings, setting things up. I do like to think I have a sense of humor. I do have a reputation for throwing dad jokes around from time to time. And so I like to provide some humor and emotional support. And so hopefully that has helped advance people's spirits and going through college. And then finally, with content knowledge, I don't have a huge background in animal science, so that's something I haven't helped a whole lot, but I'm the son my dad never had, I like to consider myself. And so in our mechanics class this past semester, I know I did take that role of teaching some of my classmates how to weld and just observing and helping them line everything up. And so I do think I did take on a little bit of a leadership role in that and try to share the knowledge that I knew. And finally, would this be Jenna Kibbe's presentation without a little bit of Cracker Barrel? And so I've been engaged as a server for almost 2 years as a Cracker Barrel, and it really taught me a lot about how to meet others' needs. And so something that I really think that I can apply this as a teacher and meet my students' needs as a server. And I did want to point out to my professors, we talked about how I did receive a diploma, and so if this whole teaching thing doesn't work out, I got something banking for me working at Cracker Barrel. I'm just kidding. I hope it works out. But Cracker Barrel University is a thing, and I did complete that, but it really did teach me a lot about how to work with others, especially with pandemic, and so I wouldn't be the person I am without a little bit of Cracker Barrel. Another job that I've been able to take part in as a new student orientation leader. And so in this picture on the left, you can see we're all smiling. We think we're going to be doing those walking tours backwards in our bright pink polos. But little did we know that year 2020 hit us all really hard. And so we actually had to adapt our orientation program to be virtual that summer in a matter of about 7-8 weeks. And we had to transition that whole program for 15,000 students. And so I was part of remaking that program into a virtual platform. And so I really did have a big taste of facilitating and teaching virtually. And so I had a really great opportunity to micro teach again. And so I could reuse those skills in my classroom. But I learned a lot about just being adaptable and rolling with the punches because nobody knew where we were going. And it really did teach me a lot. I might have gained a few gray hairs from that experience, but it did help me prepare for the future classroom. And unfortunately, because of the COVID pandemic, I wasn't able to travel internationally, but I was able to partake in something that I do think supplemented that experience. I traveled recently this summer to South Dakota Native American Reservation on a mission trip with my church in Center Hall. And so I didn't cross any borders, but it was like traveling to 2 different worlds. We do have very different lifestyles and a big cultural difference in background. And so this opportunity really taught me a lot about how to be inclusive and how to reach people's needs and how to just show love and listen to them. And so I unfortunately wanted to travel to Peru or a Spanish-speaking country to practice that minor. But this really was a great opportunity that I was grateful that I was able to partake in. And so all of these kind of work together on how I'm prepared to work with diverse learners. And so going on that missions trip and really reaching out to a whole new culture and just showing that love and support. And my new student orientation, where I was facilitating a workshop with students from China and India and Texas, all in the same Zoom room. Those all really did work in harmony to prepare me to work with diverse learners. But another experience I did, I was a partner in unified basketball. So there again, pulling my love for basketball into educating some students with diverse needs about the love of the sport. And so one semester, I spent a couple hours every day or every weekend, and we would just play basketball, learn new skills and drills. And so that really taught me a lot about being patient and just meeting students on their needs. But that really was the most fun I've ever had playing basketball. Just being with these students. And so that really did shape me a lot, and I miss playing with them. And then my professional development and Spanish minor, again, they all work collectively in harmony to help me prepare to work with diverse learners in the classroom. And so that was all the past. That's all the things that I've accomplished. So I want to talk right now at the present of who I aspire to be as a teacher. And so all of these things working together help me create my philosophy statement. And so if you flip in your handout, or else if you got one with a QR code, I tried to be techie. I might be an 8-year-old in a 20-year-old's body, but I figured out how to make a QR code. And so there's multiple ways that you can access my philosophy statement that's written out. And I have this infographic. So to have successful education in my mind, it requires 4 essential elements. The first one is individual versatility. I really mentioned that, especially with the COVID pandemic. You need to roll with the punches. You have to be able to adapt and react to the environment around you. And so I feel like in the classroom and then as a teacher, there might be things that come up. And so being versatile in your education is important. Holding yourself and your students accountable is also another thing that I think will create successful education. And so as a teacher, I want to have mentorships that can hold me accountable and make sure I'm doing the best that I can for my students. And I want to hold my students accountable for themselves as well. Finally, my last 2 are probably my favorite 2, hard work. I really believe that hard work can accomplish anything. I don't believe I have the brains of the 2 sisters, but I did work hard in my education, and I am able to be up here in front of you and get entered into the classroom. And so I think working hard really does produce good results. And so I really hope that I can share that with my students and help them feel encouraged in their education. And then finally, having a positive attitude as well. I really think that's essential for any learning, having that growth mindset that I can and I'm going to try and I'm going to work hard towards that. So those all work together as a teacher. That's what I want to bring to the classroom. So as an agriculture educator, there's 3 essential parts that I'm going to be working towards and incorporating in my teacher program. So I'm going to first hit on the classroom instruction. And so this is a broad scale of my ideal program curriculum. And so I would love to start out with an intro to ag course and just get the students a nibble of all the different subjects in agriculture and hopefully spark that passion for them to keep taking classes after that. And so I want to have certain pathways for my students to pursue if they already have a career in mind. And so maybe it might be in animal science if they want to pursue a career as a vet, or in ag mechanics if they want to be a welder, which is a really great industry to get into. And so I would love to provide all of these pathways and then specialized courses for my students to take. And in order to teach all that curriculum, I'm going to need a classroom to teach that in. And so I was not the best at using this SketchUp design, but with some help from John and Dr. Moon, we did get a taste of designing online. And so in my design, I have lab tables and some technology up there. So I really want to have like a nice open classroom for my students to do labs, do that hands-on learning. And then I have a side picture of the greenhouse and outdoor classroom area. Ideally would love to have a community garden that's located very close to my greenhouse. So that my students are really able to use what they're learning and give back to the community. And so something similar to that. And then you can see at the top, it's all connected. It's all as one room. And so this is just what I would like the horticulture side to look like. I would love to have a mechanic shop as well built in there somewhere, but I do have a passion for the horticulture industry, so I figured I'd conceptualize that in this design. And then in my class, I don't want to do my standard presentation and here's an exam, here's a crossword to fill out. I want to do more hands-on projects. And so up here, you can see I created a bunch of different concrete anchors. And so this is a simple $15 project that I'll be able to implement into my classroom and teach on a bunch of different levels. And so the actual concrete mixture, you learning the components of concrete, that's more the mechanics side. And so I can have students in that learn that skill. But then I can also apply it to a horticulture class of learning, well, what about the concrete makes it the best? So it insulates the soil to keep it warmer. So especially living up in New York, that's really great, except for on a day like today where it's 60 degrees out. But it's also porous, and so it helps with the water filtration. So it's a really all around good for your plants. It's cheap and it's easy to make, and it would be great to use as a fundraiser if you want to do your annual plant sale. I built these in my apartment. It didn't take a whole lot of effort, but they produced nice results. And so with the audience here, as you ask questions at the end of the presentation, I would like to give these planters a way for you to take home for the holiday seasons to your loved ones. So ask questions at the end. And in order to keep my kiddos in line, I do have a classroom management plan. And so in your handout, you can see those there. Staples printed them a little bit smaller than I requested, but that's all right. We roll with the punches. But I have a series of procedures, expectations, and consequences that I designed to hopefully manage my classroom, and hopefully my students will be able to take the most out of the education. And so I have my Miss Kitty's B's for my expectations. And so expecting my students to be respectful, be ready to go, be engaged, and be kind to others. And so those are just daily expectations that I have of my students and of myself as a teacher, because I can model that to my students. Next, I have my classroom procedures. I tried to make them all agriculture themed as well, and so Miss Kitty's bees, and then my procedures are supposed to help my students grow like a plant, and so simply taking your seat and getting ready for the rest of the class, beginning bell work, and then at the end of the class, cleaning up materials, completing an exit ticket, and I believe collaborating with your peers is also an essential part of learning as well, and so giving that time for my students to really talk to each other and talk about what the lesson was about and what they learned, I think is a really great way for them to build a community in the classroom, but also reflect on what they learned that day. And then finally, I have my grinding gears consequences, because let's be real, sometimes students won't follow all of those expectations and procedures, and they'll grind your gears from day to day. And so I have a couple of my consequences. So simply starting with a verbal warning and then going to a discussion with the teacher are my top two ways to really address misbehavior issues. I really want to have a good relationship with all my students, and maybe they're simply just having a rough day. And so just by talking with them, I feel like I can alleviate a lot of issues. And then going through the other schools' procedures, I modeled this after my cooperating schools handbook. By doing a lunch detention, a parent contact, and then an office referral. Those are the procedures and steps at Gettysburg that I followed. So hopefully the students will follow all the expectations, and no gears will grind and our engine will run fine. Try to do a little mechanics pun in there. So all of that working in harmony is going to work with the other circle in the 3-circle model, which is my SAE integration. And so I want every student to start off with a foundational SAE. And so simply by doing that in the classroom and in my lab will be a really great way for my students to get that experience of as having SAE. And then I'm going to have my AET Friday work time. And so every Friday I want to designate 10 minutes for my students to write down something that they learned, something that they may have worked on at home. But designating that little bit of time is a really great way for them to develop those skills of record keeping. And it's just a great way for us to work towards gaining some FFA proficiency awards, which leads me into my FFA integration. As you can see, all the circles work in harmony. And so incorporating my SAEs and classroom instruction into my FFA, I want to have local chapter meetings that work around my students' schedules. And so being the sport band, I want to work around my students' schedule to make sure that they're able to take part in both worlds. I want to be able to take them to state and national events. And so going to conventions and competing and things like that. I know I attended a lot of professional development. Pennsylvania has a lot, New York has a lot of conferences like that. And so I really think you can grow as a person. Believe it or not, I used to be very shy. I know that's kind of hard for you all to believe, but being able to go to these events really brought me out of my shell. And so I'd really love to see that for my students in the future. And then practice and integrate my leadership and career development events in class. And so by doing practice runs of SEED and agronomy identification is a great way to practice in the class for my SEED or the LDEs in the FFA competition world. And so in order to recruit your students, I did create this video with my other classmates. We tried to use a little bit of pop culture. We tried to be friends to the students, no pun intended. So we did create this video to meet students on their needs and get them interested in the program. And so I'm not going to show this video, but This is just a way for us to reach students, but other ideas that I have is food, 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 food. I know students will come when you provide free food, so that's a really great way. But I also want to do more student-based integration, and so having a student bring a friend to a chapter meeting is a really great way to gain more membership. You get credit if you bring your friend that doesn't know about this, and so it really works well for the student that's currently involved, and it also brings more members into your program. And so finally, throughout my agriculture education department, I really want to involve my community. That's something that it means a lot to me. And so simply by going into the community through field trips or bringing field trips into the school, I think is a really great way to just enhance the students' learning because it's giving them a real life application of what they're learning to the world that they know. Some students might not be able to travel to Indianapolis like other students do for national convention. And so going into the communities provides them a really great opportunity for that to learn. I want to rely on the advisory committee. I've actually had the opportunity to meet twice with my cooperating schools advisory committee. So just learning where they're at, what their requests are of the program, and what is important that they ask of the teacher, I think is a really great way to involve the community. And then finally through service learning projects. And so you can see this picture was when I was at Gettysburg, I taught my life knowledge lesson about service. And we actually assembled these care packages to donate to the Gettysburg community, to those that are in need. And so we did this in class, but it really did make a difference in the community. And so we're getting our name out there and really supporting them through the events that we do in class. And so finally, that was all the past and the present. Now, where am I looking to go in the future? And so how am I looking forward to maximizing my student teaching internship? So for those of you that don't know, I will be student teaching at the Gettysburg Area High School with my two collaborating teachers, Ms. Jenna and Mrs. Laura Kennedy. And so I'm really excited to go to this program as it's a two-teacher program and I don't have a lot of experience with that. But I'm really excited because they have great facilities that you can see in these bottom pictures. They have an awesome outdoor classroom with raised garden beds that the students actually built themselves. They have awesome classrooms with really cool labs that they're able to do a lot of projects. And they actually recently received a new hydroponics system, which I'm really excited about. I love hydroponics and aquaponics. And so doing a chapter 3 through 9 evaluation of this program, I'm going to give you a couple of gems and ops of Gettysburg. And so the gems, some things that they're rock stars at are the community and administration support. And that's something that I really have noticed in the few short months that I've been in contact with them. They really do have a lot of flexibility in the program, and I'm seeing the difference that that support makes in the success of the students. And so that's something that I'm really going to look forward when I'm applying to schools of what's the community support like. Their facilities are really great as well. As you can see, they received these grants to get these new technologies to help educate their students and help with their rigorous curriculum. So it all works together to really create the best opportunities for the students. And that's something I'm really grateful that I get to spend 15 weeks at that school to just see what it's like and see what they're doing to get all that support and work all that together. And they're really great at integrating their FFA and increasing involvement. So simply by doing fun activities like a pumpkin carving and pumpkin painting competition was a great way to bring students into the classroom and back down to the ag department, just to have some fun and to build that community. And so I really think they do an amazing job, and I'm looking forward to learning ways of that I can involve that in the future. And one thing that I want to leave Gettysburg better with at the end is SAE integration. And so they do a great job with the foundational SAEs, but I want to do more by doing the AET Fridays. And so just trying to leave it better than when I came and trying to do a little bit more to just help the overall 3-circle model. So it really is a fantastic program, and I'm really looking forward to going there. This is an overview of my master calendar of everything that I'm going to be teaching. And so to dive deeper into that, I'm going to be teaching 4 courses in their 5-course schedule. My Intro to Ag is my longest class that I'm going to be teaching, and underneath are all of the different units that I'm going to be teaching. I have an Animal Science, which is my least comfortable class, but I'm looking forward to really spending a lot of time in that and just learning more content as I go and learning more ways to teach that better. Landscape Design and Horticulture are my final 2 classes I will be teaching as well. And so I do have a pretty strong background in that, and I'm really looking forward to just coming up with cool projects to get the students engaged and involved. And not represented on here as it's an independent study class, I will be teaching welding with 5 students that came to my cooperating teachers and wanted to do welding. And so it's not an official class time that says time, but I do have some materials and projects in mind that I will be teaching for that. And so some of the organization strategies that I've done, I have all of my lesson and unit plans categorized and separated in a Google Drive. So it's labeled by class and by unit, all into neat folders. And then I also have links to all my unit and lesson plans and a Microsoft Teams, so you can go to my calendar and click the exact date. And if any of you are interested in some free curriculum, those from before now, I have a sample of my landscape design lesson and unit plans in that handout. And so now reflecting on some of my strengths and weaknesses that I want to work on. My strengths, I do believe that relationship building is something that I've been able to work a lot on towards. Being a shy person, I know what it's like to feel nervous talking to people, and being out of that shell now, I know how to approach people and I really know how people are feeling. And so the relationship building is something I'm looking forward to doing as I build rapport with my students at all different levels. I try to be a creative person, and I want to bring that into my teaching, as I know the variability is an effective strategy of a teacher, and so being creative and then adaptable as well. Some opportunities for growth that I really want to work on in the next 15 weeks are content knowledge. I just want to learn about more ways that I can teach that in a better strategy, and classroom management. And so my student teaching goals are first to connect with students to motivate them inside but also outside of the classroom in their daily lives. I want to learn new strategies and practices from my cooperating teachers. And finally, I want to leave a lasting impact on the school and community through the service projects. Again, that's something that's really important to me, and so that's one of my large goals that I have in the next 15 weeks. And so as we near the end of my presentation, I talked about the future and how my story is blank. And so this journal represents what my next chapter of my story is going to be. I don't know, it's not written. And so I'd like to ask all of you to give me a piece of advice or something to help me in the next chapter of my story as an agriculture teacher. And so at the end of the presentation, I have my notebook and some pens. I'll give it to you. If you want to write a piece of advice or something that I can take with me into my next chapter, I'd really appreciate that. I'm sure that will help me as I serve the students in Gettysburg. And so I would like to thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you for your support, and I'd love to answer any questions that you might have.
How many seconds to spare, Jenna? I love it.
I was trying to cut it close.
We will answer questions, or we will ask the online audience to please queue up your questions for Kendra, and she will translate those. Jenna, I will get us started with a 2-part question. The first one is more philosophical in nature. The second is more practical. The first being, how do you define success as an ag teacher? And the second being, how do you plan or intend on measuring that success?
Absolutely. So the question was, how do I define success? And then how do I measure that success as a future educator? And so I know that this term can be tossed around a lot in the education field, and so, but me personally, I define success in my students setting goals and then accomplishing those goals and reaching that. And so with the expectations that I set in the classroom, I expect my students to want to learn and to meet me at that level. And so the success part would be learning something and taking something from the classroom and applying it to their real life. And so as I measure that success, I don't see myself being a huge grader of exams and technical knowledge. I want to see how my students are going to intend to apply that knowledge. And so through that inquiry learning and really reflecting on the content and then applying it to how can I use this in my community, how can I use this as an SAE project, I believe that's how I'm going to measure that success in the future classroom.
Thank you, Jenna.
Bill says, question, as a student teacher, what are some ways that you plan to make your classroom and content accessible to a wide variety of learners?
Thank you, Erin. So the question was, how do I provide the content, how do I plan to provide the content in a wide variety to learners? Awesome. And so one thing that Gettysburg is really good at, and a lot of the school districts that I was learning about in Pennsylvania, they are a one-to-one program. And so that means every student has access to an iPad or a Chromebook, something that they're able to take notes on and bring to class and be prepared for every single day. And so simply by being a prepared teacher and having all my lessons and materials ready for my students, I think is a great way that I can have that uploaded on campus for a full week, and then they can have all that material to get extra practice, and they can access that material anytime and have the opportunity to learn that material for that period of time. Yes.
I have two questions. First question is, if I ask multiple questions, can I have multiple plans?
Oh, actually, well, let's share the wealth a little bit.
That's right. Second question, you're in the home stretch, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? And you can kind of look back at where you've come from and where you're going and see this program. So as you think about this program and the legacy that's being left to these next cohorts, do you have a recommendation for something that we can do to better serve our students as we move forward into next year and the years to come?
So like you as, like as a full.
We as TJAG Penn State.
Great question. And so Carson asked of ways that the TJAG Penn State can better serve the future ag educators that are coming to the Penn State programs. One thing that I think I would encourage, I tend to step out of the box a little bit and branch out more. And I think maybe collectively at Penn State promoted that a little bit more, promoted other, like the Spanish minors and other things that like will really help you. Not that the entire minors are bad and the agriculture minors are bad, but really branching out to other colleges. This is one of the greatest universities in the United States, and so we have a lot of resources available to us. And so maybe promoting some more diverse minors and things like that, and clubs to be involved in, would be a really great way to just diversify us. I know a lot of us take the same classes, and on paper we're very similar. So if we promote being more diverse in what we're studying, I think might be a really great way to create better educators in the future.
Another one online from Nell. So go to the environment during the launch, you did a wonderful job with very self-presentation. I noticed that in AAE you were talking to anyone and everyone. Which conversations stood out to you, or what would you take from these conversations?
Well, no, there's a lot of conversations I had there. So Noah asked what conversation was the most impactful to me at NAAE. Really great question. I actually have to say probably talking with Mr. Terry Hughes from New York. There really is a long connection that I have there, and so having that conversation, it kind of reminded me of where I was and where I started to where I am now. He knew me when I was more of a shy girl, and now he can see me, rolling around New Orleans and talking to everybody. And so having that conversation of just acknowledging like where we've been, what we've been able to go through in the previous years was like really impactful to me. It taught me a lot about reflection. I'm not very intentional with that. Sometimes it happens in the spur of the moment, but that really helped me like see and realize like, wow, how much I've been able to accomplish. And it really gave me insight of like what I have to look forward to in the future.
Terry's online, so you can give him a wave.
Hi, Mr. Hughes. Thank you for joining.
Ms. Kibbe, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
I would like you to evidence for me your understanding and philosophy of a total school-based ag ed program. And to do that, I would like for you to explain a learning activity that would cut across all three components of the school-based ag education program and how they'd be connected.
Yes, sir. So the question, just to make sure I have that right, what learning activity or like what activity is there in an agriculture program that covers all of the three components of agriculture education?
I want you to give me an example of a learning activity that could be connected through all three components of the school-based ag ed program.
Yes, sir. So one thing that, let's see, I'm trying to think about specifically like what I have written and what I'm going to be teaching. And so one thing for my horticulture class that I'm going to be teaching is plant identification. And so I'm going to have my students have these plant ID journals. And so that's more of the classroom. We're learning about the elements of what we look for and how we identify if it's a shrub or a tree or ornamental, things like that. And so that's more of the hands-on class. That can then be applied as an SAE if a student wanted to have a landscaping business, and using that knowledge of selecting, okay, I know this environment, what's going to be the best option? And then finally, that can be applied in FFA, as they can use that SAE and proficiencies, but they can also use that knowledge in an agronomy competition or things like that, using all that knowledge together to compete or else give a speech. I'm a huge fan of speeches on plants. And so there's a ton of different ways that they can apply all those together through a simple lesson about plant identification.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I've got one. So in your presentation, Jenna, on your facility design, I noticed you used some sort of 3D drawing software. I didn't catch a name, but do you have ideas as how that 21st century skill and technology could be applied in other content areas in ag ed?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing like with that, like just using any technology. So I use SketchUp for that. And so you were asking the question about what are ways that we can use that technology in agriculture education. Okay, perfect. And so I don't believe I'm going to be teaching a whole lot of mechanics where I'm going to be designing facilities like this. I am not an architectural engineer. But you can use that. I used it when I designed my frame and concept for my planters. And so simply by exploring and trying new technologies, that can be applied in the real world. And so I'm actually going to be building benches at Gettysburg in my welding class. And so we can use that by creating a SketchUp and a draft of what the benches are going to look like and apply that to my service project to give into the community. And so it all really connects and relates to experimenting with that technology. It might not be the main focus of what I'm teaching, but it's going to help assist in learning that material and then applying it to other, like, that community service and other parts of ag ed.
Have another one online, Brandon. It says, so good, Jenna. You have a unique perspective from interacting closely with ag ed programs in multiple states. How does this strengthen you as an educator?
Thank you, Brandon. So he asked of how can I use my interactions between two different states in agriculture education and apply that. And so actually I was reflecting with my team and a lot of them are actually going for agriculture education as well. And so I do know a lot of the strong programs in New York where I'm from. And so we were actually sharing ideas of projects that we can do for my content that I was writing. And so I think having the connections in both states is a really great opportunity for me to recognize this school is really good at this content, and then this school is good at, I really feel like my goal is a little bit bigger that I can pull from, being that I have the connections in multiple different states, and I have more, a more advantage at seeing what an effective and good program looks like, because I've been able to see what it looks like across different borders.
So Jenna, you bring a unique perspective, being from New York, going out of state for college, also starting at a Commonwealth campus. How would you encourage future students to take a similar path? Like, let's say you go back to New York and they're interested in Penn State, how would you get them going?
Absolutely. So Beth asked of how could I promote kind of doing the untraditional path of going to an out-of-state school and then being able to connect that and go to a Commonwealth campus as well. So how can I promote not just going straight to University Park? And so one thing would probably be finances. I know that was a big decision of mine. It is a little bit more affordable to start at the Commonwealth campus for the first year. And so there's no shame in starting small. And it was a really good transition for me. I graduated with 30 kids from my high school, and I went to Penn State Barron, where it was the second largest Commonwealth campus. And so that was a little bit of a better stepping block than me coming to 50,000 students here and being lost. And so that's something I would promote if I were to go back to New York and teach and say, we have a very rural school. Let's start somewhere small and then work up to the big here at University Park. But I would also say that there are opportunities too at the Commonwealth campuses that I was able to partake in. It was more personalized education. I wasn't in lectures that had 800 people in them. And so just really asking the students what they like in education. One student might like to be a member in a class, and then I would recommend to go here. But if they were anything like me and like to know your professors and get more of that personal education, I would recommend to do a path similar to what I did and start at that Commonwealth and work your way up.
Is it time for one more? Or should we-
We can end this out, Joe.
I'm gonna end this out then, this last question. Thank you for allowing. Okay, so you discussed advisory boards and having the opportunity to see that happen in action. We also talked about it in class a lot. How would you describe to a school board member that may see parents being on your advisory board as those parents being biased and they're just a booster organization for their child that's in your program?
Thank you, that's a great question. So the question is, how would I explain to a school board that might be hesitant to have parents on the advisory board? How do I explain the benefit of that? And so one thing that I would say, I would automatically give them like the presentation or the schedule and agenda of the advisory meeting. And so they're seeing what we're talking about. It's not students and not their student success. It's about the program success as a whole. So that alleviates that bias there. But I would also say that the parents do bring in a perspective about what the students want. And so the student is going to go home and say, I wish we did more projects. And so they're able to bring that to the teacher and bring that perspective of being that close relation to the student. And so that's another benefit. But also I would recognize that that parent status might be very high in the agriculture industry in the community. And so recognizing that, yes, although they are a parent, I could see that concern. They are also the largest farm that is operating in the community. And there's a lot of knowledge that we can gain from them and from their perspective of the industry. And so those are 3 points that I would bring to the school board member and say that this is a valuable perspective that we do need on this advisory committee.
Thank you very much for that thoughtful, insightful response.
Thank you, Dr. Newman.
Can you all help me in congratulating Jenna? Very well done. That concludes our public portion of this presentation. We're going to ask that you retire to 2:14.